welcome back. This Monday, September 4th, 2017, the King's Report. I'm your host, Hyung Sean Moon, second Kim Chuniguk. And here we are with our guest, Niki, Veronica Hannevig, who's also known as Niki, raised Roman Catholic and Slovak traditions in a Jewish neighborhood in uptown Manhattan. Niki has a pre-1970 Navy background as a third-class petty officer. Upon marriage, she and her husband lived and raised children in a variety of socioeconomic communities in several states and in Scotland. Professional experience includes motherhood, substitute teaching, and mediation. As a certified rehabilitation counselor, she provided addictions counseling and medical and vocational case management to injured workers. Because of her life path, Niki has a better than average view of diversities as well as the similarities within communities. Besides her experience in motherhood and group facilitation, she has planned and instructed her own version of empowerment classes with focus on what is healthy within individuals and communities rather than a traditional focus on its pathology. Upon learning in 2002 that incumbent Don Sherwood was on the board of directors of the United Nations Association USA of Northeast Pennsylvania, in 2004 Niki gained ballot access as a Constitution Party candidate for Pennsylvania's 10th Congressional District and received 7% of the vote. In 2013, she participated in the organizing and facilitation of an election for the people of Lackawanna County to convene a common law grand jury. In 2014, along with 4 other concerned people, had drafted and submitted to Senator Blake's 22nd District a cost-saving Plan A to eliminate 7 of the 10 Lackawanna County District judges. In addition, if needed, a Plan B model binding resolution on Supreme Court for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to restore the people their intended power and authority was also submitted to Senator Blake for him to introduce to the Pennsylvania Senate. And so much more she has done. She's earned a bachelor's degree of science in rehabilitation science from the University of Texas Health Science Center, Dallas, Texas. In 1990, her master's of science degree in rehabilitation counseling with emphasis on human resources administration was earned from the University of Scranton in Scranton, PA. In 2004, she received a certificate of achievement in conflict resolution and mediation from Marywood University, Scranton, PA, and volunteered at the Rose Center in Scranton until 2009. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Niki. I have to actually look in different places. I have to look at cameras over here, but I'm also talking to you here, so forgive me if I'm going back and forth. During the break, we were talking about the Federal Reserve as you broke down this incredible reality of breaking it in dollars and cents. Can you break that down once again for our audience?
Call up cost of printing.
Go to the website, guys. Go to the website. Okay, no, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, the cost of printing notes, okay? The cost of printing notes is pennies on the dollar. Since 1965, when the silver was taken out of the coin, the fact is that we have become the creditors because in 1993, somebody handed me a booklet from the Federal Reserve Federal Reserve Bank in Richmond, Virginia. And in that book, it said that it only costs 3 cents to print a note of any denomination. Well, the cost has gone up since then because the cost has gone up because they have all these colors in there and strips and everything else. However, back then, I'm thinking to myself, this is like 1995 maybe that somebody handed me the book. And I'm thinking to myself, you mean to say for every $10 of my labor, somebody is pocketing $9.97, and then of that $10, I'm expected to pay at least 20% in income tax to the IRS. Therefore, for every $10 of my labor, I am actually indebted to the Federal Reserve System for $11.97. And at the time, I wasn't thinking about the 1965 when 65 they took the silver out of the coin. When I started thinking that way, oh man, it was empowering, because what this showed me now is that we are the creditors. They are our employees. They have bonded us. So our slaves, and going back into scripture, the slaves have risen up over us. So we have to put them back in their place. And, it's empowering to know that we do have that authority. And it says right there, Declaration of Independence, first paragraph, when in the course to human events, it becomes necessary for one people. In Hebrew, that's echad. That's one. One people to, number one, dissolve the political bands which connected them to another. Back in 1776, it was the Whigs and the Tories connecting the people to the Bank of England. Back in Yeshua's day, it was the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the scribes, and they were connecting them with Roman government at that time. Okay, so nothing has changed. It's still overturning the tables of the money changers, because the money changers, they changed our money in 1965, and we have forgotten as a people who we are in the scheme of things. Because the second part of that Declaration of Independence says, to dissolve the political bands which connected them to another. Number two is to assume amongst the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle us. So we have an entitlement that we have not yet secured. And the third part of that is to declare the causes which impel us to that separation. Nothing has changed since 1776. Those people who penned that first paragraph had both the problems and the solutions just right there in that first paragraph.
And you see how they evoked nature's God, that these are rights that are inalienable, given by our Creator, not some government, not some institution, not some, human body, but by the Creator of the universe, which transcends and trumps all human institution and governments. But look at the modern day. Look at the modern day, where you have all these brainwashed children, unfortunately, who become victims of the public education system, and they believe literally the state is God. They believe anything the officials tell them. They are being hypersexualized at 5 years old with the UN health sciences courses, which are teaching them how to masturbate at 5 years old, hypersexualize them for, and giving them free abortions. Virginia now allows free abortions at the age of 12 years old without even having to tell your parents. I mean, this is unbelievable. At the same time, they're trying to force the transgender agenda under Obama down our throats, trying to, change men's and women's, boys and girls bathrooms into unisex, allowing the boys, if they say they identify as a girl, to use the women's locker room and showers. This is insanity. And at the same time, they use that just to centralize power and to say that we don't have rights, and that our rights are given by our federal rulers, our politicians in Washington. How do you think about these young people now who literally look back at the Founding Fathers? They see them as racist, they see them as white supremacists, they see them as slave owners, they see them as misogynists, they see them as, just horrible people, and they're tearing down statues. One man was arrested trying to blow up a statue in Houston 2 weeks ago. I mean, these people are completely like in a cult. They're completely filled with disinformation, hatred towards history, hatred towards the Founding Fathers who fought against the tyrants. And then they're saying the Founding Fathers are the tyrants who were slave owners and wanted to imprison black people. Meanwhile, Thomas Jefferson was the one who was putting in clauses to free his slaves. And in Virginia, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson were prohibited by law to actually let their slaves go. And they released them, of course, once they died. But all this history is lost. All this history, they say the Founding Fathers are all these white supremacists who loved, enslaving black people. Only 25% of the Founding Fathers actually owned slaves. And every single one of them, on the other side, was opposed to slavery. How do you deal with these young people who have never been really taught history, who think the Founding Fathers literally are domestic terrorists under the Obama administration? That was out in State Department documents that the Founding Fathers were domestic terrorists. I mean, this is outrageous. Give us your thoughts on that and a whole slew of things.
I'm glad gladly give you my thoughts on that. From the some being that we had lived in various states. So we lived in North Carolina for a while, where we were like in a fishing village, kind of a place. And my husband was installing flight simulators at the time. So, we just picked up and moved along with him. But it was good education for the kids. They got to see different varieties of people and communities and things like that. And what was really interesting is when the children came home from school, and they were like in the junior high school, and they started talking about the war of aggression. Okay, the Civil War. Being raised in the North, I'm thinking to myself, Civil War, the war of aggression? I got to look more into this. And it seems like what some of the plantation owners were doing is they were setting their people up. I mean, the blacks were fine with, what was going on. Everyone got along, and the blacks had their own communities and things like that, but they were happy in doing that because they were amongst their own. It's the Akkad kind of a feeling. So the thing is that what I learned is that they were doing crop sharing, because they found out, I mean, just like with a farmer, if you keep your equipment well oiled and, in good condition, it's going to pay off for you. Well, smart plantation owners did the same with their people, with the quote slaves, okay? The servitude, and we're in indentured servitude now. We just don't know it, debt servitude. Mm-hmm. So the thing is that what they were doing is crop sharing. So every a slave, you might say, had their own piece of land that they worked and they profited from. And this tearing down of all these statues and bombing them and all of that sort of stuff, that's the emotional issue that the media wants us to focus on. The fact is that the Articles of Confederation were America's first constitution. And it is a perpetual constitution. That means it's still in effect today. What happened in 1787 when they went to that constitutional convention because the central government wasn't strong enough, what they did is they formed the United States Corporation, okay? If you look at 28 USC 300215, you'll see it defined, United States, a federal corporation, okay? Wow. So therefore, what they don't want the people to know is that, hey, look, they have enfranchised us because the 13th Amendment, and I hope I hope you're putting it together. I mean, ask me if I'm going off on tangents. And
no, please, go ahead.
Okay, the 13th Amendment. The first 10 amendments belong to them and their posterity, those who put together that Constitution for the United States. It's for them and their posterity, the first 10 amendments, because by Amendment 11 through 27, the 13th Amendment especially, says there shall be no involuntary servitude, and then there's a comma, except if duly convicted of a crime within the United States or any place subject to its jurisdiction. Second part of that says Congress, meaning the reconstructed political bands that were dissolved back in 1776 in that first paragraph, okay? Congress, Democrats and Republicans, will make can enforce this amendment by appropriate legislation. So they make the laws to say, hey, look, if you do not comply with voluntary servitude, you are going to be duly convicted of a crime in the United States or any place subject to it.
Yes.
Now go back and read it for yourself. And if you, if you have any questions, ask and we'll discuss it. But it's all very much contract law, even going back to the beginning of time. You know, Yahweh put Adam and Eve, say Adam and Eve, you know, I don't know if that was their real name or not, but the man and the woman in the garden, okay? The man in the garden and then the woman in the garden, and said there's only one stipulation. All this is yours. There's only one stipulation. Don't eat of that
Yes.
tree, okay?
Yes.
Rather than tossing whatever kind of a fruit it was that Eve handed him, he, he didn't. He could have tossed it and says, "Come on, Eve, let's go stomp snakes." But he didn't do that, you know? So
Yes.
it's all law is contractual. All law is contractual. And right there, you know, from the 11th Amendment on, it's all contract law. And the 13th Amendment is key because it says there shall be no involuntary servitude, nothing about voluntary servitude, with which, if you do not comply, you're going to be duly convicted of a crime.
Wow. Now getting back to the garden, because I would always say that God blessed man and woman. I'm getting a double echo here in my earphone. Sorry about that. But God blessed man and woman to be fruitful, multiply, and have dominion over creation, or subdue the earth. He gave his kingdom and all of the beauty of creation of the universe to humanity. He didn't give it to the archangels. And the archangels always want to meddle around, get into centralized power to themselves, and be the new gods that all of us are supposed to worship as slaves. God didn't make humanity in the image of the archangel or as slaves. He made us to be free and be powerful and to be creative and be in his presence, to have a relationship with him, and of course not to eat of the fruit and not sin, etc. But he inherited, the real inheritors of God's legacy, of the goodness and righteousness of God and his kingdom, is the people. And of course, Christ also says we are to be co-heirs with him in the kingdom of God. And so thus, that's why, for example, we always say, the body of Christ, we got to get our crowns on. Because we have to understand our holy lineage and our holy connection to the King of Kings. That we are not slaves and we are not bondservants and we are not, fodder for the elite or to be, tax farmed. We are sovereign individuals made in the image of God, and humanity is powerful, beautiful, and in all our imperfection, Christ makes us perfect through his sacrifice, through his blood, through his sweat, his tears. We don't deserve it, but he calls us to step forward against unrighteousness, to stand against unrighteousness, and to stand with him in the kingdom. And that's why I call this stuff political Satanism. It's like all this stuff where they're always trying to, collude and make power and get to centralized power and create world governments for world taxes and all this. And you look at these characters, right, like George Soros or the Bilderberg Group or these Rothschild groups, the international bankers. You see all these characters, and then you have major international Deutsche bankers that come out saying these people are Luciferian. They're doing sex parties, orgy cults. They're paying $600,000 for these private parties, which have all these orgies and pedophilia. Some of the top elite around the world, like the Clintons and Jeff Epstein, in pedophile island, convicted pedophile. You're talking about Jimmy Savile in the UK with Prince Charles, the royal family there, and also Sir Edward Heath. The police coming out saying that he was actually a necrophile into murdering children and having sex with them. I mean, you're talking about literal Satanists. Literal Satanists that want to engage in ancient satanic rituals, which they think give them power and legitimize their, sitting on top and perching on top of everybody in the world. And you look at these characters up top, and they're literally not only acting like vampires, sitting on top of and just sucking people dry with indentured servitude and debt slavery and all this kind of thing, but they're literally engaged in Satanism. We have in the WikiLeaks Hillary Clinton being connected to Marina Abramovich, who is painting pentagrams, carving pentagrams into her stomach as art, quote art, having statues in the corner in a white room, throwing blood and semen on top of them, and painting statements of these witches' brews in blood on the walls, and calling this art. And Hillary Clinton is going to her parties. This is a woman. Hey guys, pick up the picture of them cutting the cake. They have a cake. This woman has a cake in the image of a human being, and they're cutting up this cake and it's red inside, and they're eating it, laughing, thinking it's a big joke, and these Luciferians are there. I mean, what is wrong with these people? They are clearly possessed by some spirit that is greater, that is not flesh and blood. Have you seen these pictures of Marina Abramovich? Okay, we got to get these up on screen for you. Guys, get the pictures up of.
I don't know if I want to see.
I mean, these people, and you have the top elites, okay? Top elites that are connected and doing these rituals. They're engaged in this. And the Bible talks about we're not fighting against flesh and blood. We're fighting against principalities, powers, and rulers of darkness of the earth and spiritual wickedness in high places. We are literally fighting against Satan. Right? I mean,
exactly. But,
this, yeah.
Yeshua did send, give us some kind of like a model to go by. He was up on the mountain and he refused everything that was offered to him. He could have had the world with a fence around it at that time. And he said, no. And he says, don't take them in John, in the book of John, I believe it's 17, chapter 17. Don't take them out of the world, but keep them from the evil therein. And
yes.
And in Revelation, it talks about, the church of Philadelphia, and everybody thinks, oh, yeah, I'm in the church of Philadelphia. Well, it says, don't let any man take your crown. So we have to remember who we are, because a crown is our sovereignty.
Yes.
And that is important that, yes, all these things are going on out there. But what are we doing personally to make a difference?
Yes. You know what I love about George Washington? We had Vince Bandino on the other day. Bolgo Media out here with different radio stations. But he was talking about George Washington, how much of an amazing patriot George Washington is. What a hero he is. And he was talking about Cincinnatus. It was one of his heroes that he heard about, what George Washington heard of when he was young. And this was a Roman general who basically was called upon by the Roman government to have imperial power to then fight off a certain group. And he was victorious, and all the people wanted to make him emperor. And he returned back to his farm, and he said, no, I don't want it. And George Washington heard that as a while he was in his formative years as a young man. And then eventually, when he, of course, was victorious with the revolution and all the founding fathers, etc., fighting against the largest imperial power in the world at that time, and being victorious, and gaining sovereignty, and everybody wanted to make him king. And of course he didn't. He stepped away and he said, I didn't want to be king. But really what in effect he did was allowed all American citizens to be kings and queens, because all the rights of the past kings and queens were, the rights of sovereignty, territory, the right to defend yourself and to bear arms. All these things were powers of the elite that they would say they have. But they were never given to the serf classes, or they never given to the other classes in feudalism. And effectively, by George Washington stepping down from, quote, being a king, he actually allowed all peoples in the U.S. to be king of every race, creed, and color. He doesn't care whether you're black, white, Asian. The founding fathers created a society where all people could come and succeed and integrate themselves into the principles of freedom and prosperity and sovereignty. I mean, what a gift to humanity. And they're being called white supremacists, and they're being called, the evildoers, and we have to do away with them and bring Marxism in by these young brainwashed kids who are like 16, 17 years old in Antifa. I mean, how sad is that?
Well, the thing is, if I were a member, okay, of the founding fathers, let me put it this way: the people who developed the colonies, it was the feudalistic system in Great Britain generally, okay, that sent their people over here to maintain charter. That's contract law, okay? Charter the colonies, all right? Now, if you were a member of those families, then by design, even though the Articles of Confederation that gave the liberties and everything to everyone, it's still in effect, okay? Oh, well, we'll just go ahead and do this corporation so that we can continue our business ventures on behalf of the crown. For them and their posterity, those 10 amendments belong to them with the militias and stuff like that. it's it's all contract law. When you look at that Constitution in terms of contract law and the way that contract was set up with these feudalistic families that were in charge of these corporations for the crown, nothing has really changed, especially after Reconstruction. Why would anybody have to reconstruct a nation that was conceived in liberty? Just the words that they're using. And capitalization, when our names are capitalized, all right, they're telling us, but we're not getting it. Look, your name is capitalized. You don't exist unless you're capitalized. Now that we have taken the silver out of the coin, it's you who are capitalized. So all these subtle things, is what they're telling us. But and the second paragraph where it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, going back to the Declaration of Independence, of course.
Yes.
Okay. There is no transition word between the first and the second paragraph. If it said, because we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and they are endowed by their creator, we would know it is the God of nature and nature's God of the first paragraph. Doesn't say, because. But there were people there who were members of the charter and were chartered to be there, contracted to be there. And their creator, of course, was whoever formed that corporation that sent them over there, and the Dutch and the English and whatever. So there are people in that midst in 1776 who were thinking to themselves, although we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and they are endowed by their creator, well, we were chartered, so our creator is, the crown. Governments are instituted for them. Okay, you see, yeah. I mean, it's right there. But
it became in Gov we trust.
It's they told us what they were doing, and we just don't get it because we're so brainwashed into thinking, oh, these apply to us. Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily.
Wow.
However,
wow. Go ahead.
There seems to be a remedy because none of the nine states that established that U.S. Constitution in 1787 had ever submitted their state constitutions to the people for ratification. Okay. Now, because we are enfranchised to vote in this corporate state or this corporate government, okay, a franchise is part of a corporation. Therefore, we're capitalized and so on and so forth. Well, the fact is that if we can get it on the ballot, nationwide next year, I mean, it's too late this year probably, but if we can get it on the ballot to ratify that 1787 Constitution as the franchise people that we are, who have never, voted for never ratified that Constitution. Let's ratify that 1787 Constitution. Therefore, we, the people who are franchised into this corporation, will have the ability to wind up this corporation and dissolve it because they are wasting and abusing resources, human and otherwise. And have a second issue on there to nullify amendments 11 through 27, and let's start afresh with the same Constitution that they had for themselves and their posterity. Let's have it for us, like you said that we did.
It's all about getting back. That's right. And George Orwell said, he who controls the past controls the future. And that's why these socialists and communists are constantly trying to erase the past. That's what they have to do. Every Marxist revolution, you got to erase the past so that you can, quote, bring in the new Marxist hellhole that they bring in. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
And we are back. Welcome back to the King's Report this Monday, September 4th, 2017. Reporting here from the Cheonilgung Palace. And we are here joined with Niki, Veronica Hannevig, breaking down so many incredible points of our reality that so many people are asleep to. The fact that, our paper notes are completely worthless. The fact that our legal tender is no more, we're not able to trade it in for real metals and gold and silver. I mean, just so many things that we've been hoodwinked with and been pulled away from the original protections that the Founding Fathers put in. Now, getting to more recent news, of course, everybody knows the big thing right now is the H-bomb that North Korea and the dictator there has, quote, successfully taken, exploded underground. It's 5 times stronger than the last nuclear test. It's now the 6th. They're going against every, quote, UN sanction, which means nothing. It just means more funding for North Korea and more tyrannies. That's all the UN does. And that's why my father, for example, called it the satanic UN, because all it does is protect dictators. It protects ISIS, it protects Al-Qaeda, it protects China, communist China, and puts them on the UN Security Council as the head. I mean, it's insane. It's insane. They're the ones who don't follow any of the UN, human rights, mandates. They're the ones who constantly break the UN Security Council's rules, and they're put it in the head. Oh my gosh, it's ridiculous. But here we go. You have John Bolton, who is again warmongering again, part of the neocon cabal with the leftist lunatic, Democratic Communist Party. Anybody from, we have brothers and sisters from Cambodia. We have my father and mother, they fled from North Korea. I mean, we've seen communism, okay? And the Democratic Party is the party of the communists. And you have the neocons here with John Bolton and McCain, who are constantly trying to put him in war. Listen to his quote. Only diplomatic option left is to end the regime in North Korea by effectively having the South take it over. And again, trying to push us into now World War III and potential nuclear war. Of course, nobody wants to get in. Trump doesn't want to get in nuclear war. He's busy trying to create jobs, over 1 million jobs, that he's creating. The stock market at, super historical highs. I mean, you're talking about Trump getting rid of the TPP and the unfair trade deals that implode our sovereignty and sell us off to the globalist cartels. You're talking about him bringing back manufacturing, turning back on our coal businesses, coal companies, getting Americans back to work, raising the American middle class again. I mean, he is just standing there fighting. Did you see the pictures of him at Hurricane Harvey, taking care of the folks down there and the victims of the flood, and him hugging everybody? And you have all these Black Americans and Hispanic Americans and Asian Americans and everybody trying to come up to him and take pictures, and they're so happy, and there's all this beautiful, unity that the mainstream media hates because it goes against their narrative that he's a white supremacist and he's a Nazi president and he's a fascist and he hates black people and he wants to make them slaves and he wants to, imprison Hispanics and he hates all Latinos. I mean, this completely shatters their narrative when they see him in his humanity and his care for people. and he's there with the people and just hugging them and embracing. Everybody's so happy to take selfies and photos with him. It's such a wonderful thing. But again, he's under attack constantly by the deep state, the CIA and all the intelligence communities against him, leaking just constantly on him. You have the generals around him. I mean, McMaster has been caught by Israeli intelligence communicating with George Soros and reporting to what's going on in the White House to George Soros. McMaster also has worked for a George Soros-funded NGO in his past. I mean, these people are connected to some of the largest international criminal bankers who literally implode nations for their profit, creating boom and bust cycles and then profiting up on the up and down cycles. I mean, they're just so wicked. And these people, again, more of the warfare state. Let's go into more wars. Let's create World War III. Let's get rid of Trump. Let's create the justification to give a coup d'etat. I mean, what are these people thinking? They're trying to remove a duly elected president and destabilize the United States of America.
Well, the thing is that, for all that Trump is doing, and I really appreciate that he's putting out the rhetoric and the narrative for what he's doing and behaving the way he is, because I think the people need it. However, I'm not sure that he really gets the drift of what he's talking about when he's talking about creating jobs under this present monetary system. Because under the present monetary system, all they pay for is the printing of the notes that pay the workers.
You're right. He should get rid of the Federal Reserve. That would be tremendous.
Because for every when people are, oh yeah, raise the minimum wage. Who really profits when that worker is still at minimum wage and the bankers are profiting 90 some cents for every new dollar they're printing?
You're right. You hit it right on the head. You hit it to the core.
Yeah.
Get rid of the Federal Reserve. Audit the Fed. Get rid of it, like Ron Paul says.
Exactly. And let's go back to an agricultural society, and that's
real Christian values. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. And go along with the 7-year cycle, the forgiveness of debt. There is so much more.
Ooh, the Shemitah. Yes. Yes, the Shemitah.
It's time. I mean, it's not like a plan has not ever been laid out for us. It has been. Yes. We've forgotten who we are in the scheme of things. All we have to do is return to that. And under the Articles of Confederation, we can, but we have to dissolve our links with this, current form of government. We have to dissolve the political bands which have connected us to these megalomaniacs.
And you're pulling the root. You're really getting right to the root and addressing the real core of the problem. It's that monetary supply, the control of the money. And God said you cannot serve God and mammon. These people are completely, go ahead.
Yeah, you're right. They have right there on their coin, in God we trust. We just haven't asked them which God. And based on that second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, governments are instituted, for the creator. Well, which creator? Because
this is so important. Because look, you can't say the name of Jesus Christ. You can't even say a prayer in school without being sent to detention now. You can't even have the 10 Commandments in a courtroom now. I mean, meanwhile, in Common Core, you can say the Shahada, which is the Declaration of Faith in Islam. The students are supposed to dress up as Muslims, go to a mosque service, and they're supposed to, one of their exercises, quote, homework exercises, to learn tolerance to other culture in their world religious class. They're supposed to make believe that they are a jihadi who's fighting against intolerant Christians during the Crusades, even though the Crusades were a defensive war because the Islamic invasions were sweeping over all of Europe, conquered all of North Africa, were imprisoning women, sex slaves.
Uh-oh, what happened?
Orthodox fundamentalist Islam. And that's why the left is allying with them. It's insane. How can the Democratic left ally with radical Islam and try to protect them and say people who say Jesus Christ should be in prison. I mean, this is incredible. Go ahead, Nikki.
Go ahead.
Right. Oh, okay, sorry about that.
Left. Get away.
Allying with some of the most radical ideologies like radical Islam that imprison women, creates sex slaves, has the largest standing and longest living slave trade, continue slave trade till the modern day. You know, and they're forcing that on a public school students, and meanwhile public school students can't even say Jesus Christ. Oh, did I lose her? Okay, we'll be right back after the short break as we get back Niki on the line. Stay with us.
Car Arms, Magnum Research, and Auto Ordnance. The Car Firearms Group. With a diverse product line that blends American craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology. It's no secret why gun enthusiasts choose Car Firearms Group. From the Desert Eagle and Baby Desert Eagle made famous by Hollywood. The history of the 1911 and the Tommy gun. To the best in compact concealed carry. Car Firearms Group is not only the first name in personal defense, it's a name that has earned the respect of gun enthusiasts around the world. Concealment, innovative technology, value, accuracy, and history. Car Firearms Group. Made in the USA. Visit car.com today.
And we are back. Thank you for joining us this morning, Monday, September 4th, 2017, our final segment with Niki Hannevig. I'm your host, Hyungjin Sean Moon, Second King, reporting live from Cheongyegung Palace. And here we're talking about how does the left get away, how does the public education school system get away with banning Jesus, banning Christ, banning Christian principles, banning Christian ethics. You can't say anything about the Ten Commandments, anything about Jesus, or you're intolerant, racist, bigot, homophobe, Islamophobe, whatever they call you, label you, put you, white supremacist, you name it. And then they, in the Common Core curriculum that is given to young students, American students in public school, this was exposed by Bridget Gabriel, where she actually read the assignments. They're supposed to chant the Shahada, which is Declaration of Faith in Islam. They can worship Allah for studies. They're made to go to a mosque. The Prophet Muhammad is having pedophilic sex with a 6-year-old girl named Aisha, who's called the mother of the faith, favorite bride, by the way, of Muhammad, consummating his marriage with her at 9-year-old girl, which is the reason why the left is protecting Islam, because the Prophet is a pedophile. And this is the same Democratic Party that protects Salon Magazine, who has Todd Nickerson coming out saying he's a pedophile and people shouldn't discriminate against him because he has minor attraction syndrome. These are the people that are constantly trying to legitimize these satanic practices. Okay? And they're allowing and they're protecting jihadis, letting them pour into Europe, and they want 600,000 more to pour into America. And that's General McMaster wants to do that. That's Hillary Clinton's plan. But McMaster is funded by the same George Soros. They want to let these guys pour in and destabilize this country so they can rule over us with a divide and conquer strategy. I mean, Niki, how do they get away with this insanity?
It all comes back to the Ten Commandments. We're not holding them accountable to the Ten Commandments. And if
Yes.
we were holding them accountable to our laws rather than their laws, trying to, oh, how are we going to go into court without a lawyer and this, that, and the other thing? Well, they covet what we have. They bear false witness. They're hypocrites as far as, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, if it's the God of mammon, that's not our God. So
Yes.
yeah,
Which God? I mean, that's the key.
exactly, and they have it engraven images on the coins. In God we trust, and on the currency, which God? That's
Yes.
mammon, the God of wealth, right?
Yes.
So in just identifying what they're doing by what they're telling us they're doing, just like the capitalization, we can do a lot. But what really I think is kind of funny is that when somebody steals under what do they call that law? The
Sharia law. Yeah.
They cut off their hand, right, when somebody steals.
Yes.
Why are they teaching this to the kids? It's going to turn on them eventually.
They do a lot worse than that.
I'm okay with that.
Mutilation was completely allowed by Mohammed. Sex slavery, you could have 4 wives and unlimited divorce, which is, when I was at Harvard, there was a student doing paper, and I regret going to Harvard, by the way. It's just a brainwashing camp. Anyway.
No, you learned a lot there. You learned how the other side works.
One of the students was writing a paper on the road to Mecca, and they were outlining and detailing the prostitute brothels that are on the way, and these pilgrims are dressed in white, and they're supposed to do this holy thing. And they're visiting these prostitute brothels on the road to Mecca, and they're getting a, quote, legal marriage to the girl, having sex with her, and after 30 minutes or whatever, they legally divorce her.
3 times, right?
There you go. And so not only have 4 wives, but also if you conquer a nation, you can hold sex slaves, and the Islamic sex trade has been the longest-lived sex trade, continues to exist today in Islamic radicalized countries, fundamentalist countries like Northeast Africa, etc. I mean, it continues on to this day. You're talking about the Crusades and the Muslim invasions that conquered all of Northeast Africa, conquered within 100 years, 150 years of its inception with Muhammad. And then, of course, into Europe, and after centuries now pushing into Europe with the Crusades, and you're having a defensive war. Christians are trying to keep their civilization alive, and that's why they're fighting against them. And now you have U.S. public school students have to pretend role play as a jihadi, fighting against the bad Christians. I mean, this is an inversion of history and reality.
Right, but it's all about divide and conquer, I guess. Because and like it or not, okay, through the seed of Abraham came them as well as us, those people who have, gone in that direction. And it's interesting because even though they're pitting the Muslims against the Christians, like they are,
yes,
we have a common ancestor through whose seed all nations shall be, saved. And if I were a megalomaniac and wanted the world and all that is in it, my only competition would be them, right?
Yes,
so let's pit them against one another so that we can,
exactly.
divide and conquer and and we make the laws, and if they do not comply, they're going to be duly convicted of a crime. So eventually we'll get them, they'll fall prey to our scheme here.
Well, you're right. That's why, with the Christian, we have to come together. And you're right. We have to come together and unite, just like President Trump's doing with the Hurricane Harvey victims, coming together tonight of all race, creed, and colors. It's just a problem when one of the ideologies literally genocides people. If you don't convert or if you leave, you're an apostate, you can be killed. But it's true when we come together around the principles of sovereignty and freedom and Judeo-Christian principles, then those violent genocidal tendencies of other ideologies like radical Islam are moderated because they have the Christian ethic, because they have the JC ethic, the Jesus Christ ethic, which then moderates that type of radical behavior and makes them accountable to, God's people. Because in the end, if the Christians put down our arms and our ability to defend ourselves and our civilization and community, if we do that, we get overrun. And in the case of America, when you look at America compared to Europe, it's the only place where the Christians still have a strong Bible-based, network. But at the same time, we still have the rod of iron. The Christians are armed here, and so you can't just push them around, and you can't just enforce hordes on them. They will fight back. I mean, they don't want to. None of the Christians want to fight back. Nobody wants a hot war. Nobody, even though they're trying to make a civil war here, nobody wants to. That we want to love our enemies and pray for our enemies, those who persecute us. We want to live in peace. We want to serve God and love God and give glory to Him. But at the same time, if we're being overrun and taken over, God calls us to stand up against unrighteousness. And that's why they're so frothing at the mouth, always trying to disarm us and always trying to get rid of Christians' ability to defend themselves and call us racists and call us, isolationists and all this kind of thing. It's so critical that Christian culture is the center because Jesus is the true God and He is the true Messiah.
Yep. And, when you stop and think about it, in John 17, it talks about we are in Him and Him in us, meaning the body of Messiah, okay? So, or the body of Christ, however you want to put it, okay? So if we are in Him and He is in us, and according to the laws of nature, and nature is God, there's T cells and B cells. There's neutrophils and macrophages. They clean out the body. It's just a matter of us realizing who we are, and if we are in this body, let us go to our ultimate destination within the body. We're not all brain cells. We're not all skin cells. We're not all muscle cells. We all have someplace where we fit in our communities and in the body as a whole. We have to learn who we are in the scheme of things and then just claim that position and do it.
Amen to that. Niki, thank you so much for joining us this morning. What a great joy it's been. I'm sorry for all my ranting. I just get really...
That's okay. It's a time for ranting. Yes.
But thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom. You're an amazing woman. Thank you for your standing up for the patriots, with the patriot community, and standing up for goodness, standing up for integrity, honor, character, and just God's love. God loves the world. He loves you. He wants you to step away from sin, step away from wickedness. He wants you to accept Jesus. He wants you to transform your life. He wants to change you and make you a new creation. He wants to completely, radically alter your destiny. You may be bought into the social cult. You may be bought into the political cult. You may be bought into the brainwashing cult of the public schools and all the government. Government is God. But God is the one true God. He's the one who loves you. He's the one who created you. He's the one who can save you. He's the one who can separate you from the pain and suffering, from the perpetual cycle of enslavement and suffering that humanity's in. He's the only way. And when we return to Him and set our civilization, it doesn't mean we'll be perfect. Doesn't mean we'll be flawless. And we won't argue with each other once in a while. But it means that God's will is perfect, and He can use imperfect people to do His perfect will. All we have to do is ask for Him for His forgiveness. All we have to do is say, God, I'm sorry. I sinned against you. I have sinned. I recognize my sin. I recognize, and now I don't want to do that anymore. And I want you. I want to be like you. I want to pursue you. And I want you to be the Lord of my life. Accept Jesus into your life today. He is the true transformer. He is the true answer. And all this chaos that we're experiencing in the world and all the craziness in our civil war and North Korea and H-bombs and all this insanity, it is Christ and His kingdom that is coming. And it is Christ who is the answer, in the end, to all things. So we thank you once again. Thank you, Niki, for joining us this morning. God bless you. Just awesome to talk to you. Such an honor and privilege to to have some time with you to discuss such important things. We thank you all for joining us on today's broadcast. We pray that you stay in the purpose of God and the will of God and give him all the glory as you go through this day. Enjoy the weather, get outdoors, get into his room and his creation, and give him all the praise. We'll see you tomorrow, 5 a.m. sharp. God bless, Godspeed, and may his kingdom come. Hey, Niki, thank you so much for joining us. Great to meet you. Such an honor.